Right now, the person that will come on stage is Nicholas Santomauro, who is Director of Global User Acquisition at Binance. So if you ever used Binance, how many people here use Binance? Yeah, me too, most of us. So he's probably partially responsible for us using Binance. So Nicholas, welcome on stage. Nick will speak for 20 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes for Q&A. So if you have any questions, write them down, and there will be space for that.
Awesome. Is this working? Can everyone hear me? Hey, everyone. I'm Nick. I lead global growth marketing for Binance, and I'm sure there's two questions on everybody's mind right now. Yes, that is an American accent you're hearing. We do exist in crypto, and we do exist at Binance, which is kind of shocking, at least for now. And then the second question is, no, I will not be talking about current events. Not sure if you guys read Twitter, but won't be going there. So let's dive in. So the point of today's talk is just to go over how did we become Binance, but also how can you replicate that? How can you grow your audience and get up to a place where you have users and you're able to scale those users and you're able to think about things from an ROI perspective, right? So we'll go quickly into some of the bigger things that Binance does. We'll go into defining your brand and value props and kind of what research you need to do. We'll talk about some marketing strategies for Web3 that I think everyone can deploy in here, but also what goes behind those strategies and what kind of things you need to think about. And then my background is in paid advertising, so we'll talk specifically about that. I was told this is an expert-level crowd, so you might hear some expert-level topics in there. If you have any questions, save it for the Q&A. I'm happy to dive in there. There's probably going to be a lot there. And then at the end, we'll go over some Binance case studies that I think everyone can replicate, regardless of budget or product or anything like that. Cool. So I just wanted to touch on some of the really big things that we do. I don't expect anyone else to try and go out there and replicate those. These are big money, big ticket things. You need to be one of the biggest exchanges in the world to be able to accomplish these kind of things. And just a shout out to the partnerships teams for putting these together. Cristiano Ronaldo, The Weeknd, Alpine F1, Argentina Football Association, Lazio, Porto. We do these massive things. We sign these partnerships for the brand recognition and the brand association, but then that's just stage one, right? You also have to then activate them, and you have to do things with them in order to really take advantage of that partnership, and I'm pretty proud of our partnerships teams for these. Another thing that we do a lot that might be harder to replicate, but I'm going over the things that you could visibly see from us. We do a lot of things that you really can't see unless you're in our target audience, is events. We, believe it or not, hosted 250 physical events last year. 250. If you think about all the work that went into this, we did 250 times of those. And that's in addition to 490 online events that we did as well. Community is huge to us. So I'm a big utilitarian marketing guy. Anything that I talk about from a marketing perspective needs to have utility. I know that's kind of crazy in crypto. It's just number go up sometimes, but if we're going to really succeed in the industry and move the industry forward, products need to have utility, right? So let's use an example about figuring out if the product has enough utility, if we should be marketing it or not, right? This is how Binance thinks. First thing is, what's your total addressable market? What's your return on effort? Is it actually even worth the effort to market this product, right? So if we look at miner extracted value, is this a problem that I'm solving? Is it worth the time and effort? Is this actually a problem? How many people know this is a problem? Is this problem large enough to make people switch? The answer to those three, obviously it's a huge problem. It's a big deal in the industry. We want to solve it, right? Is it marketable though? I don't know. I would probably say no, right? This is something that probably needs to work on the back end. I would say most retail users probably don't even know it's actually a problem. They don't even see the bots that are making their bids worse. And so in my mind, this is probably not a product that Binance would market. A product that Binance would market would be Binance Card, right? Everybody knows the utility of a credit card, right? It's very obvious what the utility of a credit card is. Now, the problem statement here is people want crypto, they don't want to spend it, or if they do want to spend it, it's impossible to spend it in the fiat world, right? And so what's the utility? You make it convenient for people to have crypto on the platform, use Binance Card to then use it in the crypto world. This is something that everyone can touch and feel. It solves a problem. This is something that has a heuristic to it. Everybody knows what a credit card is and how to use it. And so this is a product that we would market. Another thing that we look at is operating margin and customer acquisition costs, right? When we're going through our massive slate of products, we have over 30 products at this point. Are we actually making an operating margin on that product? And what's our customer acquisition cost for that product? If your customer acquisition costs are really, really high, that might not be a product that you can market, or you can't pay to market it. If your operating margins are really small, that means you're going to have a very low ceiling for what you can pay to acquire that customer. And so we're evaluating NFT gaming. Should we get into it? That kind of thing. What's the audience? Gamers, crypto enthusiasts, right? These are people that monetize pretty well from an advertising perspective. How do you recoup revenue from these people, right? You recoup revenue by selling the NFT, right? And then anytime there's sales after that on the secondary market, you also get a cut if you have royalties involved. So what's your operating margin? It's massive. There's really nothing there. Maybe you have to pay the artists, right? But most of the time, the fee mints are coming from the users themselves. And so that makes your margins really big. If your margins are really big, that means you can pay a lot to acquire those users. NFT gaming, great example of a product that is very marketable. Now, an example of maybe a product that isn't as marketable from this side of it, who's the audience for a new layer one? It's really just crypto enthusiasts at this point, right? People outside of crypto, they don't even know what a layer one is. It's very hard to market for a layer one. The other piece of that too is, well, how do you make money if you're starting a new layer one, right? You probably have to do an initial coin offering, sure, but then from there, you're running a lot of the validator sets. If you're running the validator sets, you get money from the revenue of all of that, transactional volume. But just right away, what is the margin on that moving forward? Your operating margins are probably going to be pretty small. If your operating margins are small, your CAC max is going to be low. That is very hard to market from in this industry, but all industries as well. So specifically, we're talking about ROI, we're talking about effort, we're talking specifically about paid ads and a lot of this because what's the easiest way to get visibility? It's just to pay for it, right? It's very low effort, it's low energy. You can just go onto Facebook, throw some ads out there and see who comes in, right? And so we're talking about ROI and CAC, but how do you know if your ads are actually working, right? Facebook has a platform where they tell you how many clicks you get. Twitter can do that as well. How many people go to your website, all of that, right? A lot of the times, what a lot of marketers do is they just see how many installs they get, how much traffic they get. That is not enough if you're thinking about all the terms that we were just talking about. CAC, ROI. Who cares if somebody comes to your website? Who cares if they download your app? If they're not using your product, it doesn't matter. If they're not giving you revenue, there is no point in acquiring that person at all, especially if they're not even going to use your product and not tell anybody to. And so if you're thinking about it in terms of how do we actually know what we're going to get and the money that we're going to get back from that, I look at 4 different things. The first, if you're trying to get installs, is something called the Mobile Measurement Partner, an MMP. And so if you're using one of those to track how many installs you're going to be getting, you want to send that data and every ounce of data that you have from that partner to Facebook, to Twitter, to Google. What they do from there is they take all of your data, they try and find people that look like your users, right? And then they send ads to those people, and then the MMP, through that integration, is able to see who came from which campaign, which platforms were valuable and which platforms were not, and overall, can you calculate a return on ad spend from there? If the revenue that you bring in is higher than your customer acquisition costs, that's a profitable channel for you, and your MMP just allowed you to see that. Now, yes, MMPs do cost money. They can cost $10,000, $20,000 a month, and yes, I would suggest you to put that into your ROI calculation. But again, something like this is way more important than just looking at the website traffic you're getting or the installs you're getting. If you don't actually know the revenue, it doesn't matter. This allows you to see the revenue, and then you can calculate ROI from there. Another thing that's really, really important in the digital ads ecosystem, and I'm spending a lot of time on this slide because it's really important that everyone understands this, is the conversions API that most platforms have. You can send them your data without an MMP or anything like that through just a regular data pipeline, going server to server with them or any kind of API integration, right? And so what you do is you send IP address, you send user agent, you send things like hashed email, maybe name, any kind of data points that you have that could potentially match with the audience from a Facebook or a Twitter or anything like that. You send them that data. It will improve their algorithm to find more users like your users, and that's how you can get more revenue and more revenue and more revenue, because as your user audience grows, they actually get more signal now to then bring in even more users for you, and then it becomes this snowball effect where you grow and grow and grow from there. Now, the big problem with this is security teams, and Binance security team in general, is very, very sensitive to the kind of data that we share, and rightfully so. It really does become a question about security, and the potential loss of it, versus can I lower my CACs? Can I increase my return on ad spend? And ultimately, everyone in this room just needs to kind of make that decision for themselves about what kind of a balancing act you want to do. There are more advanced things. I'm not going to get into it. That's like expert 4 on this. Things like multi-party computation, where you're not actually sending them data, you're just sending it to a third party and having the third party do the matching for you. That's kind of further off. I think that's eventually where the ad industry is going. I don't think anyone in this room needs to worry about that yet. But in general, conversions API, send them as much data as possible. It will help your return on ad spend. It just will. Third is the pixel. Everyone's probably heard of this if you've done any advertising in the past. You just put a little line of JS code on your website and drop a cookie on somebody, and then it's just cookie matching. Now, the problem with this is that cookies are going away. And so you will not be able to match off of cookies in the future. And so if that's the case, having an MMP, having a conversions API becomes even that much more important. And then the last is kind of more of a math thing, and I'll get into more math a little bit later, is a conversion lift study. And this is extremely important, especially for the larger your business gets. Essentially what it does is it says, all right, I'm acquiring this amount of users. I don't know if these users are actually coming from the ads or not, if they would have shown up anyway. And so what it does is it takes these users, it stops showing them ads, has another cohort of users, and you show them ads. And then it just measures the lift in between those two sets of users. And that lift is what your ads are actually driving, right? And so that's helpful in knowing, am I cannibalizing myself? Would these people have come in anyway, and now I'm just spending money when I didn't need to? This is extremely important on ads like on platforms like Google and Apple search ads, where you could bid on your own terms, right? If I bid on Binance, on Google, or Apple search ads, would these people have signed up anyway? They literally went out of their way to search for us, right? And what we've actually found on this is the answer is yes. So about 30% of all users that we bid on our brand terms are incremental. That means we take them away from competitors that would have stolen them from us, and we take them away from people that would have just left, but now they're seeing 2 ads. So conversion lift studies are extremely important to prevent yourself from cannibalizing your dollars. Do not spend $1 unless you know for sure with one of these tactics that you're getting return on your money invested. Now, I know a lot of marketers we don't want to admit this, we are vain people, and we like seeing our ads on big billboards, right when you come into Lisbon Airport here, I want an ad right on the billboards there. They're extremely hard to measure, right? We still need to make sure that return on investment is there. Everyone thinks that QR codes is the right way to go here. It's really hard because we've done about 15 to 20 billboard campaigns in my 3 years at Binance. We've gotten 3 users using QR codes. 3 people have used QR codes on our billboards. They do not work. Nobody stops, looks at a QR code and is like, I'm signing up for Binance. Yeah, no, that's great. That ad got me, right? That's not how it works. It's kind of subconscious. The way we measure our billboard campaigns is something called market mix matching. And we're talking about billboards that are actually not that expensive. You can probably do a pretty good campaign for $5,000 to $10,000 in a decent city, to be honest. And so this is actually very relevant for a lot of people in the room. And market mix matching is essentially you take one city where you put your ads, another city where you don't put your ads, but they're very similar cultural, and you remove the time variable from that, and now you know what your ads did relative to the city where you didn't have your ads. Television, CR7 here. I don't expect anyone to do CR7, but he's ours anyway. Measuring lift actually is possible on television, and with connected TV, CTV, it actually becomes possible for anybody to reach this kind of audience and this kind of ad format without doing a huge TV buy. And what you can do to measure this is something called IP address matching. Now, normally that's not really that accurate, right? Because people switch IP addresses all the time. But when you're at home watching TV, your IP address is actually pretty static, believe it or not. And so when you're home watching TV, a static IP address actually does become a pretty good matching source, like we were talking about before. And then you also want to be able to measure lift. And so you can do that conversion lift study that we were just talking about before. But I think the biggest value prop for television is you can actually brand build at the same time. It's a huge screen buy, the sound is on, you can bring in those users, you can measure those users on CTV, and you can build your brand at the same time. Now, what if you don't have the resources to do anything that I just said? You don't have enough money for a mobile measurement partner. You don't have engineers in order to send your data through a conversions API. You don't have the time or the money to do any of that I just talked about. There is something statistically that you can do. It's just a simple regression analysis called marketing mix modeling. Every single person in here should be doing this if you get any data at all in any of your advertising buys or any of your community buys or any of your Twitter social posts. Essentially what a marketing mix model is it's a data aggregation exercise. You take all of your Twitter social media mentions and impressions and your Facebook ads and your PR mentions and news, whatever it may be, right? And you regress that against your users that are coming in. And whatever that regression, whatever that R value ends up being highest for, that's where you should double down your efforts, right? So let's say we put all of our data into this marketing mix model, and we find out that sponsorship A, right? We did a small sponsorship with an important influencer on TikTok. We found that when his impressions go up or down, our users go up and down the most. We know that we should double down on that influencer without doing any of those fancy modeling, without spending any extra on tracking anything like that. We now know statistically sound, from a statistically sound perspective, who was driving that value for us. Every single person in here can do that. Just look up how to do a regression analysis, how to do a marketing mix model, and you too can do all of this data work. Now, 3 minutes left. I do want to go over we're talking about, what's easy to do, what's not easy to do. Can you do a Cristiano Ronaldo partnership? Can you not? It's very hard to do marketing sometime, but it's also simple too, right? Everybody knows about Bitcoin Pizza Day. Some guy spent $10,000 at Laszlo, I forget his last name, spent 10,000 Bitcoin on a couple of pizzas. And obviously he could have been much wealthier if he didn't, right? Inserting yourself into a moment like that doesn't really cost much. It doesn't really hurt you too much for trying either. Now, we went a little bit bigger and we had a pop-up stand. We did this year too, but this is some 2022 data. We had 2 pop-ups. We had one in Cannes and Paris. We had about 100 attendees each, which not a huge amount, right? But the amount of content that we got from this to then be able to use on social media, which is also free, right? We had 1,000 UGC entries, over 200 of which were actually really, really high quality, that we're then able to use on social media, just from a contest, a simple contest that we put out there, right? We got all this free content for ads. We put it all in social media. We have all the additional media value of people writing about this, just from having CZ go somewhere and cook up some pizzas from people. And so just from this one tiny activation where there was only 100 people there, we generated over 20 million impressions, 608,000 clicks, 1.6 million video views. We had a 30% engagement rate, which is just absolutely insane, and a 16% video view rate. We barely spent anything on this, literally barely spent anything on this, mostly just CZ's plane ticket. And the guy likes, flying well. We'll just leave it at that. And $540,000 worth of media value were accrued just from this cheap activation, just inserting ourselves into the conversation. Another thing, relevant to what we've just been experiencing with AI, we did this activation around something we called Bakasso, which we are going to have to change the name because Bakasso's people did not like that. But we did this activation where we had NFTs, which are relevant to the space, obviously. We combine that with AI. We combine that with art. We inserted ourselves right into that conversation where you could have gone to Binance, and we will be bringing it back in an actual productized form at some point, where you can go to Binance and generate an AI image that also is an NFT just by uploading a couple of your pictures. Well, our goals were re-engagement, new user awareness, and we also wanted some BNB chain usage. And our results, 3.1 million images generated, 100K NFTs minted in less than 6 hours. Almost 5.5 million visitors to Binance NFT in one day, and we do not get that kind of traffic normally. It's a 13% increase in our normal traffic. And this is the biggest thing, we actually resurrected our churn users at a higher 9x rate than we normally do. So anybody can do those kind of things. If you have any questions, we can, definitely feel free to ask me during this Q&A section. I'm available the rest of the day. I'm going to be hanging out. Feel free to come up. I know there's some technical terms in there, and I'm happy to go through them. Thanks, everybody.